So you want to watch Bungo Stray Dogs. Well, hopefully by the end of this video, you know the goods, the bads, and you know the stuff that's not really too bad, but not really good about the show. But let's go ahead and get to this video. So if you were here for the last video, you know how we do these reviews. There's going to be a few things that we stick with when it comes to the review. And remember, this is from some random guy on the internet. But we're going to be talking about animation, plot, fights, soundtrack, and also the characters. And all these scores can get, you know, a grade from 1 to 10 on a scale of 1 to 10. And this is including decimals, because, you know, if I don't include decimals, eventually a lot of animes are going to get the same rating and you're going to be like, this guy doesn't think anything's different. But that's how we're going to be grading Bungo Stray Dogs. So, when we start off with animation, Bungo Stray Dogs, I mean, the animation is actually pretty good. Like, in the beginning of the show, they have this, you know, this one food that they show multiple times, you know, that, like, you know, it looks really good with the animation. And also, if I didn't say, this is a spoiler-free anime review, so you're not going to have to worry about any spoilers in this video. I'm going to keep it, you know, pretty vague, and, you know, I'm not going to go too deep in anything. But as far as animation, it's pretty good. Like, you know, it has updated animations, so, you know, for the most part, the animation shines whenever you're seeing, like, the city and stuff like that, because this show is set in, like, a city tone. So whenever you're, like, you know, just seeing the way the characters interact with going around in the city and, like, some of the fights, that's when the animation really shines. You know, it's pretty good, you know, and it's updated animation. It's not something that's like an old, early 2000s anime, but it's also not like, you know, Demon Slayer or, you know, something like this where they're like, you know, spent like thousands of dollars on one episode. So it's that good in between where it's like, hey, they actually put some effort into this animation. So for the most part, this show centers around Atsushi Nakijima. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong for, you know, all you know, diehard fans. But for the most part, the show is going to center around him and two different groups in the show. But for the most part, the show is kind of about, you know, Atsushi basically just trying to find his place in life. And this anime is set in, I guess, a more mature setting. So it's not like high school. It's not going to be something like My Hero Academia or, you know, something where the characters are starting off young. They're older, so you're going to see more adult themes in this show. So, you know, there's going to be, you know, some uncomfortable things in it also. But, you know, it's also enlightening, you know, to, like, see a show that's set in a different age period. So, like, if you've watched Tokyo Ghoul, that's kind of like around the time period that this is actually set in. So there is one thing that I will say about Atsushi, and, you know, I mean, if it bothers you, it doesn't, you know. If you've watched shows like Black Butler and stuff like that, this isn't going to bother you, but sometimes the main character doesn't seem like the main character. Sometimes Atsushi, you know he's the main character, but you might feel like another character is like, you know, more so the main one. You're going to like that one more. Now, there probably are some people out there where Atsushi is their favorite character from Bungo Stray Dogs, but I'd like to believe that majority are probably going to like another character more than him. And like I said also, it's set more like with them having a more advanced age, so there's going to be more adult themes in the show. So another thing, there's a certain scene that they have in the show that they'll play on repeat. So if you've watched Naruto, you know that, you know, that swing in the show got about, I don't know, maybe like a whole episode worth of screen time, the amount of times they showed the swing. You kind of get something a little bit similar in Bungo Stray Dogs, where, you know, they show this same scene multiple times, but I mean, it doesn't really get too annoying if it's not going to bother you. Another thing about this show, it's more mystery based than action. Now, don't get me wrong, there is tons of action in this show, but it also has an aspect of mystery which you can very much appreciate. And if you're into mystery and into like solving clues and stuff like that, you will definitely like this show, because for the most part, it's not just a clear cut, you know who the villain is, you know what their motive is. Like, you might know who the villain is, but, you know, there's a deeper motive, and that's what I like. The characters in the show, it's not some simple motive for everybody. Everybody, you know, has something deep. Also, the arcs are well paced, and, you know, they give you a sense of depth. That's something that I really like in anime. And, you know, if you like an anime where you actually feel as though the characters are in danger, and, you know, actually feel like there's a possibility that one of the characters could die, this is a good show for that, you know, because the characters, you know, very well are in danger, and you actually do get a sense of depth There's no holding back with blood, so I mean, if you don't really like lots of blood and stuff like that, might not be the best thing for you. Like I said, this is like a more of an adult themed show, more, you know, set with them being older, so yeah, there is more blood. I feel like it's more so targeted towards, like, you know, not really teenage, but young adult audience. So there's one thing about this, like the blood stuff. So sometimes in the show, the durability of the characters can seem a little unrealistic. If you get what I'm saying, if you don't understand what I'm saying, like if you've watched Tokyo Ghoul, there's, you know, multiple times where characters will get impaled and arms chopped off, whatever, you know, and they're just going on about their day. That's what I mean. So there might be some cases where a character will really get beat down really badly, and you're like, how are they still alive from that? But, you know, it's just part of the show, and if small things don't bother you like that, you'll be fine. And then another thing is realistic power scales. So this show, the power scales are, you know, very modest. It's not like something extremely crazy where people are destroying whole towns or destroying 5 to 6 city blocks. They're pretty normal, like not really extremely realistic, but hey, there's a possibility, you know, that something like this could happen if somebody was experimenting on people in a lab or something. So when we get to characters, like I said, the main protagonist, like I said, he can be a main protagonist, but you might feel like other characters are more like the main character. They more like have the personality of a main character, but you know, that also just plays into, like, you know, who Atsushi is supposed to be as a person. He has a bad backstory, a bad past, so you know, the show is also kind of about him getting confidence in himself and, you know, and actually believing in himself. So I mean, if you're really annoyed with Deku in the beginning of My Hero Academia, then yeah, like I was, you might be a little annoyed with him, you know, a little bit feeling down on myself, that stuff, but you know, it's just part of his character and part of him growing as a person. And you know, there's enough characters in the show to find a favorite. So I mean, if you don't really like Atsushi, there's other options, and unlike the past review I did where I said Hunter x Hunter, these other characters, they get a decent amount of screen time. So you're actually going to be able to see these characters, and you know, you're not going to get favorite character withdrawal. So this show does have unique abilities, but it's not as tailored to each character as much as, like, you know, Hunter x Hunter. Now you're not going to see much copycat abilities, but for the most part, the abilities were kind of just, you know, slapped on the characters. It doesn't really have too much to do with their personality. Some of them do. Some, I'm not going to say all, because some characters do have abilities that kind of go with their personalities, but then there's some that are, you know, just kind of like, okay, you just got this ability. And another thing is, I'm not really going to get into any other characters, but one character I do have to get in because he has a unique character type that you don't really see in a lot of animes, kind of similar to Hisoka, is Dazai. Now, he's a very interesting character, and that, you know, it's mainly, I mean, I was already gravitated to him from the beginning of the show, and it's probably because he has Gojo from Jujutsu Kaisen's voice. You know, any character with that voice is probably going to be interesting, but he has very much that type of personality, and he's a very, there's also another aspect to his personality that's not really something that you see in another anime, and people that's watched the show will know what I mean, but he's a very amazing character, very well written, and this is what I mean when I feel like sometimes he steals the show from Atsushi, kind of similar to Black Butler, where Sebastian was a little bit more of the main character than CL.
What did he say?
Don't attack. But another thing about the characters, intelligent villains. That is always something that I can appreciate in the show, when the villains have a deeper motive than, you know, I'm just coming to destroy the planet or something like that, or like Obito, you know, my girlfriend died. It's more something deep than that, and you know, it's something where the villains are intelligent. You're not going to be able to find out what they're doing just easily, and you know, it's something that you can appreciate because it's kind of like a mind game a little bit between the good side and the bad side, and that's just another thing that I gotta go into. There's kind of a gray area between good and bad in Bungo Stray Dogs. Even though there's two different groups, you kind of can see the perspective from both, and you kind of really wonder who's truly the villain. Are they really bad for what they're doing? And as you go into the show, you just learn to appreciate both sides. So when we get into the fights, like I said, in the animation, the fights is really where the animation kind of, you know, comes to light, and you can really see just how great they animate this show when it comes to certain aspects. You're not going to see too many mental games when it comes to certain characters, but there also are characters that, you know, when they're fighting, it's more thought that goes into the process, and this is what I mean with the power scaling. There's not really too many overpowered characters where, you know, I'm just going to win this fight with bronze. For the most part, it is thinking, and this is where I said it goes towards the mystery aspect and the fact that villains are intelligent, you know, and intellectual and stuff. This is going to, you know, make these fights even more interesting, and it's kind of like a little bit similar, maybe not as similar, but it kind of reminds you a little bit of Death Note and the mental battle between Light and, you know, L. It's kind of similar to when you see these two groups interacting with each other, and just also whenever you see the good guys interacting with the people that are supposed to be considered bad in the show. Because I also said there's a little bit of a gray area in the show where it's like you kind of question a little bit what is right and what is wrong. Lastly, we get into the soundtrack, and I'm being honest with you, don't attack me in the comments. Remember, this is the opinion of some random guy on the internet. But as far as like OST, there wasn't really too much that really stood out about Bungo Stray Dogs. If I'm being honest, there wasn't really that many songs that you just like remember in your head like, hey, I remembered that song from Bungo Stray Dogs. But they do, their intros are where the music shines, and they do this thing that some animes do where whenever there's pivotal points in the show, they'll play certain intros and stuff like that. And you know, that's what really gives you that feeling like, hey, this OST is really fire, but it's actually really the intro. But that's not to say the OST is bad. It fits the show. It's more so kind of like, I mean, it kind of switches a little bit between like classical with a little bit of like, I guess you could say like upper beat techno. Not really techno, but like futuristic, kind of a little bit mixed with like classical sometimes. I know it sounds like a weird combination, but basically what I'm saying, the soundtrack is good, but there's not really much that, you know, is just going to stand out. You're not going to remember much songs from Bungo Stray Dogs coming from other animes unless this genre of their OST is specifically the type that you enjoy. So, when we get into the final verdict of how we're going to grade Bungo Stray Dogs, once again, random guy on the internet, if you don't agree with me, let me know in the comments why you don't agree with some of my ratings, and, you know, we can talk about it. But when we start off with the animation, like I said, it's not bad, it's not okay, but it's not great. It's right there, you know, at good, and, you know, really it shines when it comes to the fights and stuff like that, and also just seeing the city and the food, the tea on rice, just seeing that. But we can give it a solid 8 out of 10. So, we move over to the plot. Now this is another area where the show, you know, really shines pretty well. While it's not just some deep, intricate plot, the two groups and their motives and the way they just interact, that's what really keeps the show going, and it just makes you interested, just seeing the way that they just interact with each other and just seeing the journey of the show. And for that, we can give the plot a solid, you know, 8.4 out of 10. Remember, I said I'm using decimals now. So, we move over to the characters. As far as how we're going to rate the characters, there's not an extreme amount of characters, but there's enough where you can find somebody that you enjoy, and none of the characters really just seem like a whole lot of copy and paste. While you are going to see similar character types that you've seen from other shows, there are a few unique ones that you haven't really seen, and, you know, that's what really makes the show shine, when you see the characters and the way they interact. For that, we give the characters a solid, you know, 8.4 out of 10. So, we'll go over to the fights. The fights, like I said, there's not going to be anything that's just going to be extremely visually stunning, but the fights are still enjoyable, and they don't put you to sleep, and they're not too long. For the most part, none of these fights are just going to last multiple episodes. You're not going to have to deal with multiple build-up of just people charging up for multiple episodes. Sorry, Dragon Ball fans. But, like I said, pretty good animation, pretty good fighting, so for that we can give it a solid 8 out of 10. So, this next thing is going to be where Bungo Stray Dogs has the lowest rating, and that's when we go over to the soundtrack. Like I said, the soundtrack, unless it's specific music that you enjoy, you're probably not going to find anything from the OST. Note, I'm saying the OST, that just sticks out to you. But when you listen to the intros, the songs are pretty good, and the animation in the intros are pretty well also. And my favorite intro from this show is definitely number 2. But if you've watched Bungo Stray Dogs, make sure you drop down in the comments what your favorite intro or favorite song from this show is. But for that rating, we're going to give it a solid 6.5 out of 10, which, you know, is a little bit low. But hey, overall, Bungo Stray Dogs got a rating of 39.3, which, you know, according to this chart that is by some random guy on the internet, means that Bungo Stray Dogs is a good anime. Meaning, you should very well take the time out of your day to watch this anime, especially if you're into like mystery and, you know, just seeing the journey and stuff like that. But really, if you're into mystery, if you enjoyed something like Black Butler, then you'll more than definitely enjoy this show. You know, definitely be something that, you know, will stick with you. But let me know in the comments anything that you agree with or disagree with this review, and we can talk about it and discuss it. But thank y'all for tuning in, and also drop down any other animes that you want to see me review. But I'm going to see y'all next time. We up.